When we talk about mergers and acquisitions, and specifically M&A success, the conversation often starts with deal announcements and ends with the purchase price. But what is rare, what is very rare is that that's really not where success is won. The truth really is that with mergers and acquisitions, value is actually not created by signing the deal, but value is created by what was understood before the signing, what was planned before the closing, and what can be executed on after day one. And this is exactly where successful acquirers really distinguish themselves. If we look at some research and also the some research on M&A success, specifically from the global PMI partners, they make a very clear point around this, and it shows that around 70% of the responders rated that their last deal um, as successful or very successful. But the revealing figure is that 92% of acquisitions were synergies, were validated, managed, and tracked, were judged as being very successful. And this is really a striking reminder that this discipline around value capture is not an administrative exercise. It's really central to where the deal actually works. So a question then to look at is to think about what really drives M&A success. Now, successful deals begin with really having a strategic clarity. So a investment thesis and real clear strategy. So a company should be able to explain in very plain language why this is the target, why now, and how value will be created beyond simple ownership. What we also saw from the survey is that to increase market share, enhancing the value proposition and adding products and services are leading deal rationales. But a rationale is only useful if it's specific enough to guide your diligence, your integration, and your capital allocation. And too often, many deals begin with this ambition, but then end with a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. What also stands out is that the best acquirers do not just pursue deals because a target is available. They pursue deals because the acquisition clearly advances their capability, their market access, their scalability, and uh, strategic repositioning. And that broader point we see echoed often from the advisors, professional firms in their dealings, both which stress that successful acquirers tie this deal thesis directly to a realistic value creation plan and sharpen the integration blueprint around this thesis. A second crucial point is that success depends on diligence that goes beyond the numbers. So your financial diligence still matters, of course, and it's a big part. But modern M&A success is increasingly determined by whether the buyers properly do diligence, the people, the culture, technology, operations, and the practical realities of integration. What we saw in the survey and the research that also comes is finance, people, HR, legal were the top three diligence areas, with IT and operations more recently rising in importance. And more than half of the respondents also included integration and carve out planning in the diligence. And this is significant because it suggests the better acquirers are no longer treating integration as something to think about after the ink is dry, but they're bringing execution thinking into the deal phase itself. And of course, this matters because many deals don't fail for the lack of spreadsheet logic. They fail because the operating model was never properly tested, The technology architecture was underestimated. The leadership bench was thinner than expected, and the culture gap was waved away as a soft issue. We saw from Bain, McKinsey, etc., many points explicitly highlighting this point, that the cultural conflict, slow integration, weak value capture, it results in weak value capture rigor, and management misalignment can compromise deals that look attractive on paper. The third factor to consider is success requires very detailed integration planning before you actually close your transaction, not after. And I think this is one of the clearest messages that's come through, not just in this survey, but also from various other research sources. And it emphasizes that integration blueprints should be done pre-deal, or at least the latest pre-closing, and that the first version of integration plan should also be prepared way before the close. We also see that it notes that most integration teams need to be mobilized way before signing, and between signing and closing, definitely not after. And we see this. The strongest acquirers know that day one is not the start of the integration thinking. Day one is the first visible test of preparation. So really to see if leadership, if governance, decisions, rights, communications, consumer continuity, system priorities, and really the synergy ownerships are already mapped. And then the business begin the post-close period, reacting rather than executing. And again, in M&A, delaying this can be very, very, very expensive. Momentum matters, confidence matters, talent retention matters, customer reassurance matters. And if people inside the acquired business does not reflect the logic of the deal, uncertainty fills that vacuum. And we see that this we see this from the survey, by noting that post-deal communication is critical, and that entrepreneurial businesses in practice need to be won over through clear logic, involvement, and empowerment. Another success factor that stood out is success really depends on a disciplined synergy management, and this is where many deals overpromise and under deliver. Synergy should never be treated as vague justifications for valuation. They need to be defined, validated, assigned, sequenced, and tracked. We saw again very strong and coming through in the survey as well. Synergies management is tied directly to integration work plans, and respondents who validated and tracked synergies had far better success outcomes. Broader research moves us in the same direction. We saw McKinsey also note that many companies cast too narrow of a net on synergies, focus only on costs, and fail to reset synergy targets when new information becomes available post-close. Boston Consulting Group, similarly, in some of their work, argues that synergy capture depends on turning ambition into disciplined execution. With really rigorous plans, clean teams were needed, equal seriousness and a focus on revenue and cost synergies, and precise tracking. So for boards and management teams, the implication is pretty straightforward. Synergy assumptions should be treated with the same seriousness as any other investment assumption. They are not narrative support, but they're really part of the underwriting. The fifth point that stands out is success with M&A requires the right operating model. So every deal ultimately asks a design question. What should be integrated? What should remain autonomous? And where real value is created. We saw from the survey highlights that, especially in the context of roll-ups, where both centralized and decentralized models can work, but only if the choice is made deliberately from the start. Factors such as economics of scale, procurement, R&D, go-to-market requirements, agility, customer proximity, cultural realities all influence this answer. And this is critical because many integrations fail not because of too little was done, but because the wrong things were integrated in the wrong way. A target acquired for entrepreneurial synergy can be suffocated by over integration. A target acquired for scale of economics can disappoint if too much autonomy is preserved. An operating model has to reflect that deal thesis. The 6 point success depends on capabilities, on governance, and repeatability. This has come through a lot, again, also in research, also in practice, in many of practitioners in their reports and surveys. In this particular case, we see from the survey done based on 2025 data that the full cycle M&A capability remains elusive for many organizations, and that 60% of respondents do not use a M&A playbook. And this is very telling, because if M&A is a repeated strategic capability, then it should not be reinvented each time. Repeatable playbooks reduces risks, improves mobilization, captures lessons learned, and create consistency in execution. And this is where the serial acquire advantage really comes from. We saw research from Bain, from BCG, McKinsey, PwC, that M&A and really notes on M&A that more active acquirers are building faster and better deal processes, now also enabled with AI. We saw McKinsey also highlight insights, continuing to emphasize that top deal makers elevate integration as a core capability rather than a once-off project. So when we step back and try and create a picture around this, the M&A success story is really a mystery. Well, rarely a mystery. It's actually much clearer. It tends to come from fairly consistent set of factors, for clear strategic rationale, broad and rigorous diligence, realistic operating model, strong communication and change leadership, disciplined synergy tracking, and the organizational capability to execute all of that without losing the underlying business in the process. So in other words, successful M&A is less about brilliance of announcements and more about the quality of management systems behind it. The deal may be the catalyst, but the execution is what determines whether the promised performance will really be the outcome. And I think perhaps the most important lesson for leaders is that M&A, in M&A, you do not buy success at signing, but you build it deliberately, cross-functionally, and relentlessly. So from diligence through integration to ultimately value realization. Again, thanks for listening, and looking forward to share some further thoughts in future.